Funeral of the Dead Butterflies and Wayward Passenger are two very different abnormalities. One of them is a butterfly and the other one is a passenger. But their themes intersect a lot more than it meets the eye actually, and I want to discuss it with you. Sure, each abnormality has a lot of themes and meaning, nothing is one-sided, but I want to say that their main themes are the same. Of course it's not something up to me to decide, everyone can find what's most important for them specifically, this is just my point. And one more thing before we start. My sound/video editor/manager cost money. I decided to open Patreon/Boosty so I could possibly make videos not once per month. If you want to help me out and want to see me upload more often, consider subscribing and stuff. You will get a shout out in a video and also some new possible perks in the future. Let's begin with the butterfly. This is a certified Project Moon sexyman. Again, like, who will my next video be about? Red Hooded Mercenary? It is sleek, it is edgy, it is an object head. You can picture it in some modern trendy cartoon if you try. It looks really unique, with this black and white color scheme and thick white outline, surprisingly much different than its colorful concept art. A look that perfectly illustrates who it's supposed to be, a peaceful mortifier, a mourner, a lamenter of living and congratulator of departed. Abnormality drawn from collective desire to mourn, or perhaps a fear of yourself not being mourned about. It's quite obviously about death. It's not only about death, but it's 90% about death. Specifically about remembrance of the departed. It collects butterflies that represent soul of those who passed, giving them some kind of rest and preserves memories of them, even if nobody else does. I always associate it with this poem by John Donne. Each death is a great tragedy, even if no one has time to acknowledge it, even if it is just one of 1,000 white butterflies. Funeral is the one who all of the bell tolls for, because it is the only one who cares enough. And I also find it tolls for the hilarious in context of like, it's literally tolls for you with this dude, because it makes ding 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 while it shoots and kills you. Toll a bell, but not for me. Kind of surprising to me, but a lot of cultures have a folklore about connections of butterflies and death. I don't know, never really thought about them in this way. My go-to death theme insects were always moths. In ancient Greece, for example, butterflies were called the same as goddess Psyche, a word for soul. In Ireland, they also were considered to be souls. It was so important that it actually was against the law to kill one. Similar with Japan, with specifically white butterflies sometimes referred as souls of the departed. And, funny enough, a large kaleidoscope of butterflies being a symbol of bad omen. Every other third culture has something similar, honestly. So, he walks with a coffin filled with endless amounts of restless souls that don't have any other place to go. He is giving them some sort of improvised funeral because no one else is doing it. But this huge coffin isn't nearly enough to substitute the hundreds of undug graves. Why do they have nowhere to go? Why does no one mourn them? Why weren't they buried and did not get their peace? Because this abnormality is not just about death and remembrance, it is about work and treating the employees, it is about the horrors of capitalism, it is about how you're just one of countless others to your employer. Do you know how high are suicide rates because of work reason in Japan? Have you heard about the crunch culture in Korea? All of that. Horrors of capitalism is, without a single doubt, the main theme of the entire setting. Everything is about that. Every story is somehow related to it. This is a red line through the Project Moon works. A terrible system that makes everyone miserable, pushed to a comical extreme. Importance of the theme is honestly can be hard to remember, with how, again, comically exaggerated things in the city are, with like every company almost trying to kill you for the profit. One of my favorite moments related to this come from Distortion Detective, when they go into Taeyong Produce Company. With stuff like best for the employees, so they don't need to waste time networking, going home and back. It was scarily real. Sometimes I wonder, how is it to work at Project Moon? Especially now, when they give us new content on a clear schedule of once every 2 weeks. Butterflies are trapped here, because they work here. Working is kind of like selling your soul to a company. You can't leave it, even after your death. You don't need to be mourned about. You don't need to be remembered. Maybe even your death was planned, everything to meet the quota. Feather does not detach from a wing of its own will. I am not sure why I decided to do spoiler warning for Library of Ruina in Shoot's video. Like, it's completely okay to talk about blunt feedness and Sancho-ness of Don Quixote, but it's completely forbidden to talk about Angela's ego. But okay, I guess this is something that I will always do now. Library of Ruina spoilers ahead. Angela worked great here. She's an overseer who knows about every death. She's doomed to watch them all die on almost infinite repeat. She is someone for whom the bell tolls more than anyone else in this company. She was sorrowful about those deaths. It was something that tormented her. But gradually, she comes to accept that as an unavoidable reality, and everything that she can do for them is lament. Showy sadness such as tears will only wet the wings. Employees and seafarers are bound to this place, not only because of those contractual things, they are literally stuck in a time loop, and the only escape is to make it to the end. And even after that, when it seems that they finally can fly home to the flowers, the library happened. No matter what, they're trapped here. The fragile wings will keep fluttering, waiting for an end that must exist somewhere. So, Yisan. It is kind of hard to start, because Butterfly is so Yisan coded. Firstly, there are a lot of things about wings in its iconography. The idea of getting wings after your demise, freedom that death gives you, ability to fly whenever you want. But all of this is stripped away from you by this corporation. Your wings are unable to bring you home. Secondly, direct reference to his poems. Number 9 of course is you in his support passive, I think about it being written seamless in number 1. Number 10 his passive, and honestly whole identity is a reference to it. It's about a dying butterfly and the idea of flying somewhere after your demise. Also, though it's not Yisan, most famous Kim Kirim's poem is about a butterfly. This is a reference in Canto 5, by the way. Thirdly, the idea of being abused by corporation is something that goes through history. They used leak's invention for the bad corporate evil things, like text or the window, that disbanded the leak and whole thing with long run. And even if it's not directly about him, his canto takes place in K-Corp and shows us a lot about their inhumane practices. Firstly, Yisan has a lot of things with death, both the poet and the character. He is the one who carries the memories of the league, who mourns about it, while others are either moved on or dead. Some are even dead by his own hands. Switching to Gregor. Why he has it? Because it makes him look hot, obviously. As for other, less important reasons. It has a thing with arms, and of course Gregor must have an ego of every army-rated abnormalities. It is also an insect, and specifically a butterfly. And how butterflies are born? Metamorphosis. Abuse from a big corporation is an origin story of his. He is the product of a company, he himself is not important, and he is neglected right after he did his job, as other G-Corp employees. His mom is a big important corporate, and she is like the main villain of our story. And just like in Yisan's case, his canto explores the general mistreatment, this time from G-Corp and even some L-Corp. He is also closely related to death. He was a soldier, after all, he saw a lot of deaths and he remembers them. Being in the front line, seeing madness that is happening in the field of battle, made him understand the value of life. In contrast to Outis, he shows a lot of empathy, even sorrow about fallen soldiers. My favorite case being Sasha's observation log. Small world-related thing. One big resting place for each and every soul that will not replace a proper burial. I don't know a proper English equivalent of this, but in my language we call it a brother's grave. I think they did it worse, when because of colossal death count, it was impossible to give everyone a grave, so bodies were thrown in one big hole. Looking at his phrases, the Waking one is kind of basic. It tells us about the core thing of abnormality, mourning for the fallen. Corrosion is slightly more interesting. I see it as a desperation about a wish to be free, to return home. We will be stuck here forever, there's no point of hope, we can only embrace this as our destiny and flap our wings in this horrible place without even a flower to pollinate. And a final thing about Gregor, something that completes the picture of his connection to the funeral. Did you know that Kafka from Honkai Star Rail has a butterfly pin? On that incredibly funny note, we are ending our butterfly section and moving to the passenger. I, for once, don't really like its design. Maybe it is too scrawny for me. Looks more silly than intimidating. But still, it does its job greatly. On the first glance, it looks like a typical warp train resident. Something scary, gory, meaty, but when you look closer, when Dante looks closer, you get that it is actually an employee, not a passenger. And amplified by the controls of meat and warp technology in his hands. The bottom half of the abnormality looks just like a human cleanup agent, nothing remotely abnormal. I like how rips and dimensions that it creates are tied to the seals. It is not a W-Corp technology, it is an abnormality after all. It is a simulacrum of a technology, layered with something from the depths of a human mind. A fusion of typical terrain things and something who deals with them. But how did it get here? That's a flavor theme of this abnormality. Being lost somewhere unexplainable, straying from a path, disappearing somewhere in between without the ability to return, and, seemingly, without anyone to look for you. Lost and abandoned, tossed out like a trash, having no place left in the city. But even in this position, it tries to do its job. When we guide it to the entrance, it's actually making sure that we ourselves will find it. When we don't interact with it, when we don't give it any ideas of who we are, it perceives us as the only readable thing it can see on the train, as the passengers. And so, it tries to clean us up. It has nothing else to do besides the assigned task. It has nothing left besides the loyalty to the company and a hope to be found. Because you were hired, you are important to them, right? And again, this is the main theme. How is this abnormality even real, by the way? Abnormalities, say it with me, are products of collective unconsciousness, and common folks know nothing about warp trains. Of course, a lot of people still fear them as a fear of the unknown, but this abnormality is really specific to the real horrors of warp trains. Who knows the real horrors? Employees. It is your day-to-day job, your routine even. Only you know how all of this really works and how horrid it is. It's not about fearing the unknown, it is pretty specific fear of that technology. Fear of being somewhere between dimensions for an eternity. But, we are returning to what I said earlier, it cannot happen to you specifically. You are important to the company. Yes, they do all of those things to other people, but not to you. You are working for them, you are helping, you believe in them. Abnormality risks the dread of realization. You believed in them and still you're here, lost without anyone to care. Ones that you are sure are gonna help you are the ones who put you in this position in the first place. You were never important, you are always just a part of a system. You are not above other people that system is hurting, you are just in a slightly different position. I believe you see my point now. Wayward Passenger is about mistreatment of employees, in some other way, with some other focuses and with a completely different flavor, but it is about mistreatment of employees. Wayward Passenger and Funeral of the Dead Butterflies are kind of the same abnormality. Wine boom, title drop. Of course, having a couple of abnormalities based on the most important theme of the setting is kind of expected. You can even stretch a couple of other abnormalities to think about the same thing, like flash shoes from my previous analysis. It's nothing strange or anything, I just find it kind of fascinating how different they can make something so closely related. Anyway, we still have egos to discuss. Let's, again, start with sinner number 1. Job part has already been mostly said. Abuse of inventions, destruction of the league, K-Corp as a whole. Now there's also an interesting connection to the part of being used by the ones you trust most, that being Donran, and later other league members. Yisan's warp train identity has some interesting moments that can be tied to the abnormality. I guess it's only fair to look into literal warp employees when we're having a discussion about warp employee-based abnormality. Throughout his update story, we see that he is, well, not happy to work for this company. He muses about his employers, about the fact that he cannot trust them, that they could have already wiped his memories few times, that he maybe lived through a couple of lifetimes, that he is, in fact, no different from any passenger. But his reflections come not as something of sadness or anger, it is a melancholic acceptance. He cannot really be sure about anything, and even if he could, what worth does the truth hold, if any? These are the terms that he had agreed on long ago, and he can do nothing but continue his work. Being lost is a pretty good summary of his state between Canto 4 and League's demise. He lost everything that he cared about and did not know what to do next. His Canto has a recurring motive of closing one's eyes. Yisan is letting someone else drag him through life, whether it is Gubo or in this case, W Corp. His design fortifies this by covering his eyes with flesh. He has gone so far that now he just can't open them anymore. He's so Noah-coded. His awakening phrase is about all of that. It is beautiful here, like someone wants you to be lost. Path is designed to take you as far as possible. Or maybe the opposite. It's alluring to be lost. You are nowhere, but at least you're free, away from them, and you don't want to go back. And I feel the same energy from the corrosion line, but it is more cryptic. Joy of freedom. Ali is open, so he can walk through it. It makes more sense, slightly, when you understand that this is a reference to, again, Crow's Eyes View. Poem number 1 references both the possibilities that it can be a closed alley and that it can be an open alley. And here he is, triumphant about it being open. It could be closed, but it is not. Perhaps we can interpret the awakening line as something more strict and abiding by the rules, to make this one stand out even more. Like, colors are beautiful, but I can't go this path. I can't walk any further. I work here, but I can't dive deeper. It makes me forget. I'm too bound to my word and to my workplace. Then, when it snaps, letting everything from deep inside of you out, you understand that in the end, the alley is an open one. Aesthetically, you're making a step into the literal nowhere. I'm probably stretching it too much now, but I just like the implications. Corrosion of abused workers shows us another extreme side. He tries to escape grasp of the ones luring over him, but goes too far and it leads to self-destruction. Working in a place you don't want to is a pretty obvious thing to do with Hanlo. We can see it in his K-Corp identity, we can see it in his W-Corp identity. This is something that stems directly from the book, of course. His family wants him to be a respectable young man, working at a great important position. So, of course he is a great suit for a work-related abnormality. With that in mind, the theme of abuse is slightly less on the surface. It's not directly about the abuse from your employer, but it's still about the authority figure, his family. Without consent, shoved in a place he does not belong. Double with the more literal connotation of being out of place, being in another dimension. Same with the stuff about betrayal from ones you trusted. This is my family. They're the only people that I have. How cool they do this to me. How cool they make me work somewhere when I'm miserable. But more importantly, the wedding event from the book. How cool they literally destroy my life, taking away everything that I cared for, and they even dare to lie to me, giving me false hope of actually getting it. As he is here, he's just following the flow. He does not really have a path now. He is stripped from everything that could guide him. He is lost, and this work is kind of the only thing happening with him. He's just doing what he is told, without a care, jumping here, jumping there. Warcorp doesn't care what happens to him, and he does not care himself. So there is his awakening phrase, jumping between dimensions in a silly brain-empty way, usual Hanlu style. By the way, hear me out, what if we equate dimension jumping to W constantly switching state in the book? Like, now he's in the sky, now he's a stone in the human world, now he's a human, now he's in the land of illusions, now he's a stone again. Corrosion is really similar to Essence. He's finally somewhere when he decides to be. Nobody put him there. At last, a sense of control. This is still something bad, he's still lost, but now it's because he wanted to be here, and no one had expected it. Yet again, a joy of being free. This kind of reminds me of the ending of the Dream in the Red Chamber. It was Wu's decision to return to Stone, and no one else. I doubt that he maniacally laughed about it, but still, he finally can do something of his own will, and just like I said, this act of freedom is about changing his state. Small interesting notes. I like how aesthetic of being both normal human and a weird gory abnormality thing correlates with him being human, but also something different and distant. And specifically, he holds a weapon, something more human and generally Warcorp related, in his right hand, and his left hand is disturbing mole. Like his right eye is normal, and his left eye is, well, his left eye, a jade. Before we move to Outis, I want to go on a little off topic tirade. In all honesty, I don't get the Sin Affinities of EGOs. I usually just ignore them, or look at a very surface level, and this is because I kind of don't care. I don't know why, Sin just never interested me, so I never try to come up with my personal interpretation of them, and I especially don't want to read someone else's. I just don't see them as something deep, and too many times the choice of a Sin feels like a silly color coding thing. I usually like this kind of things. I spent literal hundreds of hours thinking about Homestuck aspects, so perhaps someday I will change my mind. Anyway, those two are blue. Outis is purple. Weird, is it not? I already pointed out that Ysan's and Hanlu's egos feel very similar, with their corrosion codes being kind of the same. They're proud of themselves, they're finally doing something for their own benefit, they disregard everything else just for the sake of being in control. And Outis is not at all about this. So let's finally dissect her. I started the last two with the concept of workers' abuse, and then moved to the concept of being lost. But in her case, of course, abuse is something much less prevalent. Like, her book is The Odyssey. It's to a comical degree about being lost. Being stranded far, far away without a clue of your location. He's thrown here and there, arriving in the land he never even heard about. Kind of a different dimensions. Like on Sharia, the island of Fakens, or, as close as you can get to a different dimension in their cases, the Hades. I don't even have something to add here. He's traveling on a ship, ships are like trains. In a way. Coming back is his whole motivation. It's important and that's it. But why is he lost? Because of the gods. Gods are ironically employers here. Someone who Odysseus trusts is helping him, but they are also the reason for his misadventures. Betrayal of authority figures that you trust, yada yada. When you travel by sea, you're practically giving yourself in the head of Poseidon, with hope that he will be in a good mood, just like you have nothing but trust in Warcorp when you use their technology. And in both cases, carelessly giving your life into someone else's hands ends up tragic.
Do not avert your eyes even for a moment, lest you be ensnared in an eternal wandering.
I sense a strong vibe of those typical myth roles which are in abundance in the Odyssey. Something weirdly specific and made up, but can be broken or everyone will die. 2 riles for the characters. Like the episode with the Sirens, which you shall not hear, or with Oxys of Helios, which you shall not kill. And like killing Oxys doomed Odysseus, here Outis also seemingly violated the given rule. And now she's telling you this, so you do not repeat her destiny. Or she's rambling it to herself as a reminder of her mistake. And the corrosion is... quite simple. She's desperately trying to find her way back, but she can't. She's too wayward for this. Trying to reach for something that you can't have. Again, not at all like Yisan and Hanlo. Feel much more purple than blue. Fits what I think about envy, I guess. Honestly, it's a great example of how sins may help you with understanding the abnormality. Some sinners are more connected to one of its themes, while others to another, and so they receive colors that's more closely represented. That's neat. I will probably look at affinities more because of this. Maybe I will even try to close my eyes and the fact that the envy is charged color and they needed to support Outis' new charged identity. And that old ones could be pride because back then they did not feel the obligation of making every status effect ego only the color of its effect. Like I said about their flash, they were experimenting more back then. But now you got also stuff like gems in Mirror Dungeon, which will not work if the color is wrong. I guess it's really hard to find a balance between the gameplay and lore. Oh yeah, we were talking about Outis. I guess I like how gore aesthetic suits her. Book is kind of brutal, especially the ending. Odysseus committed a massacre when he came back, killed everyone who pillaged his home, and then executed some servants that he thought were not loyal enough. And the general concept of sacrifices to gods, there's a lot of graphic description of butchering the lambs. Do you remember that Funeral of Dead Butterflies and Wayward Passenger are kind of the same abnormality? I can easily see Outis as a candidate for Funeral EGO. That's our smooth segue into prediction part of the video. Throughout the journey, Odysseus' crew is rapidly shrinking. Men are lost in each and every trial they face until he is inevitably left alone, so he carries the memory of them, and, like I mentioned before, at one point he went into Hades. He saw his dead comrades, talked to them, tried to reassure them that their death is not meaningless and that they are remembered. Also, one of the cultures that I mentioned had connection between butterflies and Soul of the Dead is Greek. And of course God still represents the employer here. Just like that, we can speculate about every sinner that I talked about in this video to have the author ego. Yisan is already doing it. Hanlo of course carries the memories of Dayu, and like generally there's a lot of deaths in his family over the course of the book, and Gregor of course is lost. Even the handling. It's just kind of boring, and I believe that egos there already got fit them better. So, what about some new sinners? I will put Ryoshi as my first pick for the funeral specifically. I see abuse from the authority figure as the main theme of Hellscreen. Both Yoshihide and his daughter suffer from their lord, because he just wants so, and because he wants the daughter but can't get her. And that led to him killing her, painting this as something to teach Yoshihide a lesson. Yeah, Remembrance of the Dead is not a perfect theme for this character. He does not really care for any deaths beside his daughter, but it still can work. Ryoshi obviously carries the memory of the daughter with her, and the sword on her back is probably related to this. So, like the coffin of abnormality's back, there are also some small details that we can use to tie them together. Her icon is a butterfly. Yoshihide has a connection to death, drawing corpses, and similarly to Odysseus, connection to hell, drawing hell. Again with the butterflies, Ishmael. It is hard to remember because Limbus amazingly never brings it up, but coffins are kind of the main iconography thing with Ishmael. Being saved by Quickly's coffin is an iconic book moment, one of the first that come to mind when I think about it. So yeah, do I need to say anything else? All of his crewmates are dead, and he is the only witness. And Ahab is a horrible abusive employer. Symbolism is so strong here that it's honestly hard to picture her as a wayward. Speaking of him, Faust vibes with him strongly to me, but it is kind of difficult to explain without knowing her lore. She is a corporate dog, knowing about inner working of Limbus company more than everyone else. She depends on them more than anyone else. So, if for whatever reason company will do something bad to us, she will suffer the most. We already see her being completely lost without company's help in the murder on the Warp Express. Also, one of interpretation of Gesellschaft that I saw is the other world's Faust, so there possibly is an aesthetic of different dimensions. Lastly, I feel the act of throwing homunculus into the waters as something somewhat fitting. I don't know why though, like changing states maybe, going into something scary, mysterious and unexplored. And to finish off this video we have... Don Quixote. Father is kind of the abusive authority figure. It is complicated, yeah, Kanto is about that, but we can fit him into this role if we try. I really like how Rocinante and Lethe allow her to enter what is completely different world to her, something scary and unfamiliar, yet alluring and interesting. And she was pushed into this without the consent. Butterflies honestly kind of also work on her, my only problem being that nobody died before her Kanto. But now yeah, she is carrying the weight of her entire family with her. Also she at one point forgot all of them and that's funny, kind of. That's all folks! Capitalism is bad. Trains and butterflies go together well. That's the moral of the story. Thanks for listening to me, thanks to my manager Vlask. Remember that I now have a Patreon and a Boosty. Capitalism is good if you are talking about me gaining the capital to make next videos. Like and subscribe I guess.